Let's talk about bankruptcy. A fresh start's closer than you see. It rebuilds lives and brings back smiles. This is the Bankruptcy Files.
Hey, Bankruptcy buddies. Welcome to the Bankruptcy Files, a new podcast where we're going to talk about money, finances, debt, all that taboo stuff without any judgment. I'm Lauren Clark, a South Carolina attorney and podcast host by day and a mythbuster by nature. After over 15 years of helping people out of debt, I've seen so many misconceptions about bankruptcy. The internet is full of fear-based nonsense when it comes to debt and bankruptcy, and I wanted to create a space for truth and clarity. I wanted to drop a weekly episode, about 15 to 30 minutes a week, which my paralegal laughs so hard when I said that. She is my co-host on another podcast we do about reality TV and true crime. She's like, ain't no way, Lauren. But I will try to keep it brief, or at least divide it into a few episodes. And here we're going to talk about what bankruptcy really is and what it isn't. Talk about how people rebuild after experiencing the worst times in their financial lives. I want to introduce myself and other bankruptcy attorneys. People are so afraid to call us. They try everything before they figure out what their rights are. And we're not scary, I promise. I think I have some of the best colleagues anybody could ask for. In fact, I've got over a dozen ready to come here and talk to the bankruptcy buddies. Now, that being said, this podcast is for education and empowerment purposes only. We are not giving legal advice. For example, I'm only licensed in South Carolina, and I'm only qualified to give legal advice in this state. Every court is very different. Bankruptcy is not just the federal rules. We have local rules, just court by court. And even knowing the rules, bankruptcy is very fact specific. It's going to look different for every person, which is one of my favorite things about it, is getting all the puzzle pieces together and figuring out the numbers. I'm a numbers nerd, y'all. So the best thing to do is if you find yourself needing bankruptcy advice for your specific situation, make sure you talk to a local attorney and they can help guide you in the right direction. Let's jump into our first episode. A good idea to talk about some of the common questions that people have when they come to see me. And we'll break that down into 3 different categories. The am I a bad person category, what happens to my stuff questions, and how bad is the damage? Am I a bad person? The vast majority of people that I talk to are not bad people. They are very good people that have just had unfortunate financial situations. Divorce, job loss, serious illness. Those are the top 3 reasons people come to see me. Divorce, they don't expect it. You have a 2-income household and all of a sudden half of that income is gone. That creates a huge shift in the financial dynamics. Job loss, it's not something that you expect. There could be mergers, there could be layoffs, they could be getting rid of a department. And sometimes it takes longer to find something to replace the prior job. Unemployment doesn't pay much either. And serious illness, it's not something anybody asks for. And medical expenses in the United States, it's not cheap, y'all. It's not cheap. None of those things make you a bad person. So just because you come to me with debt, it doesn't mean that you're irresponsible. Absolutely not. Because these things can happen to anybody. It just means that the unexpected happened and you borrowed some money with all the intention to repay it. But the interest makes that so difficult. I personally experienced that paying back my student loans for law school, and that was at 6.8% interest. Interest is one of the hardest things when it comes to getting out of debt. One question that we get pretty frequently, also this am I the bad person category, is will everybody know I filed? While bankruptcy is a public record, in order to access these federal files, the bankruptcy files, you have to have a PACER account. That's a federal account where you access the court's records, and you have to do training for it, and then you have to pay for the pages. So unlike, for example, the state courts In my state, you can go and pull up lawsuits for free. Anybody can do it just by going to the county link. Bankruptcy files are a little bit harder to access. It doesn't mean that people won't find out you filed. Your creditors will find out that you filed. We want them to know. We want them to leave you alone. But there's not some huge announcement made to the world. It's not put in the newspaper. Is bankruptcy a failure? I like to say it's a solution, not a failure. It's a way to help you get rid of debt if you're a good candidate, which is why it's important to talk to a local bankruptcy attorney. Is bankruptcy going to ruin my life forever? Absolutely not. There are so many worse options than bankruptcy. It's supposed to help give a good faith debtor a fresh start. That is a phrase that you hear so often with bankruptcy. Judges write it in their bankruptcy opinions. It's supposed to help good people get back on their feet. We've seen interest rates as high as 1,000 on credit cards before. It's just shocking to me. Bankruptcy helps level the playing field. The next category of questions that I get is, what happens to my stuff? Am I going to lose my house? Am I going to lose my car? While the vast majority of my clients don't lose their asset, the answer is it depends. I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about this without giving legal advice. And maybe this will be a good topic to do more of a deep dive into in a different episode. I guess a general way to address this, bankruptcy can actually help save assets that aren't protected outside of bankruptcy. What do you mean, Lauren? What are you talking about? Let's take a house, for example. You have a house. Most people have mortgage payment. Let's say without bankruptcy, you get behind on your mortgage payments. What happens? The mortgage lender is going to say, hey, give me that house back. You're not paying for it. Bankruptcy may be a tool to help you keep it. You may be able to propose a plan to get caught up on your past due payments and to make your regular payments over a 3 to 5 year period. And during that time, as long as you're making those payments, the creditor can't come and try to take your house. So that's one example of how it could be protected more than outside of bankruptcy. Another example, every state is going to have different laws about what your creditors can do to collect if they sue you and get a judgment. And let's say that you have some assets that the creditors could take outside of bankruptcy. If you file bankruptcy, you may be able to set up a plan to help protect those assets. I usually tell people, if you want to keep your house and you want to keep your car, just like outside of bankruptcy, make sure you keep making those payments. But that's not the case in every situation. So again, it is best to talk to a bankruptcy attorney about your situation. And make sure you disclose everything. Let them know about the asset. If they don't know about the asset, then they can't protect it. And I'm not just talking about assets that you are paying off, that you owe money on. I'm talking about all of your assets. But that's one of the things that I do in consultations is find out what the client's goals are, find out what they want to keep, and come up with a plan. How bad is the damage? Is this going to ruin my credit forever? The answer is no. So a Chapter 7 bankruptcy will stay on your credit for 10 years. A Chapter 13 will stay for 7 years. And just because bankruptcy is on your credit, it doesn't mean you can't have a great credit score. I've seen people with credit scores in the mid 700s just a couple of years after filing bankruptcy. I like to pull bankruptcy specific credit reports for my clients that actually give them an idea of what their credit score will be within a year of filing. And I would say most people have a 6 to a 650 credit score. I see people get credit card offers pretty quickly after bankruptcy, so it doesn't mean it's going to keep you out of trouble. Home loans, 2 to 4 years, depending on if you're looking at an FHA loan, EA loan, conventional loan, also depending on what your income is, because credit's not going to be the only factor. I've seen people get car loans in just a few months. But I don't love talking to people about how to get into more debt when I'm trying to get them out of debt. There are some loans, though, that are good investments, like purchasing a home. So definitely some exceptions here. But As a bankruptcy attorney, one of the things I do in my cases, and that bankruptcy attorneys will do in their cases, is help you create a budget. I don't like to see repeat customers. I don't want people to have to repeat this cycle. Not because bankruptcy is bad damage, but just the stress of having debt can take such a toll. It's such a burden. That's what I had planned for the first podcast. I do have some plans for future podcasts, though. I'm going to do one breaking down the 342 notice, a notice that you need to read before you file bankruptcy. Everybody that signs that voluntary petition signs that they have read the 342 notice, and it goes over some important things. It talks about bankruptcy fraud, which in my opinion is the most important thing to understand. It's punishable by up to 20 years in jail and up to $250,000 in fines. Something I absolutely want to address. Another episode, I want to talk about questions to expect from an attorney when you go in for an intake. What are they going to ask? I have quite a few bankruptcy attorneys who are excited to come and jump on the podcast and talk about bankruptcy. Some other things I want to cover, maybe jump into Reddit and look at questions that are being asked online. Let's look at pop culture bankruptcy cases, like 50 Cent. That is a wild one. He was posting pictures on social media with fat wads of cash, and the court had some questions for him. I am so excited to be here and to get to know the bankruptcy buddies, and I'm happy that you're here too. Thank you for listening to our very first episode. Make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, make sure that you follow, leave us a 5-star review, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.
Disclaimer, The Bankruptcy Files does not provide legal advice. Commentary on this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, including discussions of public bankruptcy cases and online content. Listeners should consult a qualified local attorney. Interacting with this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. Hosts and guests speak in their personal capacities. The Bankruptcy Files is not affiliated with any employers or law firms and is not a debt relief agency or provider of legal services.